Most men don't realize it, but the woman sitting across from you at a restaurant today is operating on a completely different behavioral system compared to the women your grandfather dated. This isn't just about phones, fashion, or social media trends. It's about deeply rooted expectations, learned habits, and rewritten social programming. Imagine trying to run modern software on a computer built in the 50s. Errors everywhere. That's what's happening in relationships right now. To understand this shift, consider a simple challenge. Ask a woman under 40 to cook a basic meal without turning to Google, TikTok, or Pinterest. You're not demanding gourmet sauces or Michelin star plating, just rice, chicken, and vegetables. Many will freeze. They'll deflect. That's not my thing. But flip the question and ask what they expect from a man: income thresholds, leadership, emotional fluency, romantic initiative, financial security, and effortless maturity. The contrast is almost comical. And it's important to clarify, this isn't about wanting anyone barefoot in a kitchen. It's about baseline adult competence steadily evaporating while expectations continue to skyrocket. Your grandfather's generation valued the ability to manage, maintain, and contribute. Today, contribution has been replaced by the belief that presence alone is value. Social media has crowned everyone a queen, regardless of skill, empathy, or effort. Women are encouraged, even praised, for having standards, but rarely challenged to match them. A client once shared an encounter where his partner offered nothing financially, didn't manage chores, avoided emotional accountability, yet had a detailed list describing everything he needed to fix about himself. When he questioned the imbalance, she labeled him stuck in old traditions. The truth? Modern entitlement didn't appear overnight. It's a cultural cocktail. Curated digital lives, comparison addiction, and narratives that paint contribution as oppression. Meanwhile, men are expected to remain stoic, competent, and endlessly supportive, often while receiving none of the qualities they're shamed for wanting. This creates a dangerous cycle. Men lower expectations to avoid conflict, but in doing so, unintentionally encourage incompetence. A man doing everything himself might seem noble at first, but 5 years later he realizes he didn't build a partnership, he raised another dependent adult. The imbalance is visible everywhere: skyrocketing demands, disappearing skills, and emotional volatility disguised as authenticity. Men feel this shift deeply, but society insists they're imagining it. They're not. They're simply awake. And here's the twist most men don't anticipate. What if lowering expectations is no longer a strategy, but a trap?
If the first shock hits men from rising expectations and shrinking contributions, the second hits even harder: emotional volatility. Previous generations understood a universal truth: feelings are real, but they're not always accurate. Today, the culture teaches the opposite: feelings outrank logic, personal moods override shared responsibility, and discomfort is framed as oppression. Watch a modern couple in conflict. The man becomes quiet, attempting to stay calm and rational. The woman interprets that quietness as coldness or withdrawal, which intensifies her reaction. The more emotional she becomes, the quieter he gets. Suddenly, the silence he used as a shield becomes the weapon she blames him for. It's emotional circular warfare: no beginning, no end. Men instinctively attempt to solve problems with reasoning. Women today, however, are conditioned to defend feelings as unquestionable truth. Challenge an emotion and you're invalidating her. Suggest a solution and you're not listening. Ask for clarity and you're controlling the conversation. You can't win the game because the rules shift mid-sentence. A client of mine once told me he had full conversations with his girlfriend where the topic changed 3 times, the accusations evolved twice, and the conclusion was completely unrelated to the initial argument. He wasn't debating a point, he was navigating emotional weather. The goal was not resolution, but release. Even worse, many men have been conditioned to apologize just to end the conflict. But every apology reinforces a subconscious message: your feelings are wrong and hers are law. After years of this dynamic, men lose not only their voice but their identity. They become peacekeepers instead of partners. Ironically, the more emotionally chaotic the environment becomes, the more these women desire a man with stability. Yet they simultaneously punish the behaviors that create stability: boundaries, standards, and logical calm. Stability is boring until instability breaks them, then they look for someone to blame. This volatility is exhausting because it's disguised as passion, authenticity, or trauma awareness. But emotional expression without emotional regulation is not depth, it's turbulence. Partners aren't supposed to be perpetual crisis responders. Many men adapt by lowering expectations and emotionally disconnecting to protect their mental health. But emotional distance triggers panic in women who rely on chaos for validation. She wants connection, but her habits destroy the space where connection lives. This is the unspoken truth. Modern relationships often feel like managing weather patterns: unpredictable, stormy, draining. If emotional volatility is the spark, disappearing contribution is the gasoline. Relationships are exchanges, not transactions, but value circulation. When both partners contribute, respect flourishes. When one partner removes their contribution, something invisible begins to rot. Older generations understood reciprocity. If a man provided financially, the woman contributed domestically or emotionally. There was balance, not always perfect, but clearly defined. Today, those expectations have become one-sided. Provision, protection, leadership, planning, execution, these remain attached to masculinity. Meanwhile, anything historically associated with femininity has been rebranded as oppression, servitude, or patriarchal enforcement. Ask a modern woman to handle basic household responsibilities, and you'll hear language reserved for political revolutions. But ask a man to work 60 hours, fix the sink, soothe her anxiety, plan dinner, and initiate intimacy, and you receive silence. That's just bare minimum masculine responsibility. One client described his wife as living on his income, using his insurance, occupying his home, but insisting that buying groceries with his money made her a slave. In what universe does using someone else's resources for basic survival qualify as oppression? This isn't about chores, it's about ownership of responsibility. Contribution establishes respect. When someone contributes nothing, they subconsciously begin to resent the one who contributes everything, because indebtedness feels uncomfortable. Instead of gratitude, they invent reasons to diminish you. It's easier to call someone controlling than to admit you're not pulling your weight. As men lower expectations to avoid conflict, a far more dangerous process begins: competency atrophy. If you stop expecting effort, they stop developing ability. If you stop requesting contribution, they forget how to contribute. After years of this dynamic, you're not helping a partner, you're maintaining a dependent. The worst part is when a man finally reaches his limit and asks for change, he's labeled toxic, demanding, or old-fashioned. Boundaries today are reinterpreted as domination. Standards are redefined as misogyny. Accountability becomes emotional abuse. Meanwhile, respect quietly drains out of the relationship. Without respect, attraction dies. Without attraction, intimacy fades. Without intimacy, resentment grows. The couple becomes roommates with unspoken resentment, tolerating each other instead of choosing each other. You're no longer in love, you're in maintenance mode. Men feel this, but society gaslights them. Just communicate more. But communication without contribution is emotional labor, another task added to a man's already overstuffed list. You can't negotiate respect. You can't compromise your way into contribution. When equality becomes extraction, collapse is inevitable. Modern entitlement didn't arrive like a lightning strike. It crept in quietly, disguised as empowerment, disguised as self-worth, disguised as knowing what you deserve. And while confidence is essential, confidence without contribution morphs into entitlement fast. Decades ago, relationships were built on mutual appreciation. A man's willingness to provide was respected. A woman's nurturing support was valued. That balance created gravity. Both pulled weight. Today, that gravity has weakened. Men are expected to offer the moon, while many women feel their mere presence is the sun. You can see it everywhere. Dating profiles listing income requirements, travel demands, height filters, emotional availability checklists, followed by, "I bring good vibes." Vibes don't pay bills. Sarcasm doesn't raise children. And being a queen doesn't automatically build a kingdom. This mindset is fueled by social media, a dopamine machine that works by comparison. Women scroll through curated lifestyles, yacht trips, designer bags, surprise vacations. They don't see the work behind it, only the aesthetic. And they forget that extraordinary outcomes require extraordinary contributions, not inflated expectations. Meanwhile, a strange paradox has formed. The more a man provides, the less appreciation he receives. Fix the broken faucet? Expected. Work overtime to cover expenses? Bare minimum. Listen to her emotional storms? That's your role. But ask her to handle dinner, pick up groceries, or contribute financially, suddenly anything requested is oppression. Another client shared that his partner lived on his salary for years. When he asked her to manage household scheduling because she had the time, she responded, "I'm not your assistant." How easily contribution has been rebranded into servitude. This erosion of gratitude corrodes connection. Appreciation is fuel. Without it, even the strongest engines sputter. When a man is continuously asked to perform while receiving nothing in return, his internal dialogue shifts. Why try? Eventually, effort becomes resentment, resentment becomes detachment, detachment becomes the beginning of the end. Worse, entitlement removes accountability. When someone believes they inherently deserve more, they never ask what they should contribute. They demand better results without offering better behavior. They weaponize language. Boundaries become control. Standards become toxicity. And expectations become domestic oppression. And here's the silent killer. Once a woman stops appreciating you, she quietly stops respecting you. Once respect dies, love becomes conditional. Intimacy fades. Admiration evaporates. The relationship turns into an emotional ATM, withdrawals only, no deposits. Men are told to just be patient, but patience without reciprocity becomes self-harm. You cannot fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom.
By the time entitlement sets in and appreciation fades, something deeper begins to crumble. Respect. Most men don't notice when it starts. It's not loud. It doesn't begin with shouting or dramatic exits. It begins with small dismissals, eye rolls, sarcasm, delayed responses, or quiet criticism disguised as jokes. Respect isn't about fear or dominance. It's about recognizing value. When a woman respects you, she speaks differently, listens differently, and even disagrees differently. But modern programming teaches many women to see masculine contribution as a baseline requirement, not something worthy of recognition. Once effort becomes invisible, respect evaporates. Men often try harder in this phase, hoping increased generosity will repair the bond. They buy gifts, plan dates, work longer hours, or shoulder more chores. But generosity without reciprocity doesn't create gratitude. It breeds expectation. The more you give to someone who already takes too much, the deeper the hole becomes. Eventually, the masculine energy that once felt attractive begins to feel disposable. A man's leadership gets labeled as controlling. His standards become selfishness. His fatigue becomes emotional neglect. And when he finally voices his frustration, she weaponizes language. You're not supportive. You're distant. You're not enough. Meanwhile, her own contribution remains unexamined. One man told me his wife stopped showing affection, refused intimacy for months, but demanded emotional support whenever she felt uncomfortable. When he asked for connection, she accused him of pressuring her. Over time, he stopped asking altogether. That silence wasn't acceptance, it was emotional retreat. Here's the secret most men never learn. Respect dies long before the breakup. Attraction disappears next. Intimacy becomes transactional, then scarce, then extinct. The relationship becomes two people sharing a roof, sharing bills, sharing groceries, but not sharing hearts. And the most tragic part? When a woman loses respect, she begins to test a man to confirm her feelings. Small provocations, subtle boundary pushes, emotional pokes, not to destroy him, but to justify leaving him. If he tolerates everything, she confirms her suspicion. He's not strong enough to lead. If he pushes back too late, she'll claim control and play victim. Men trapped here feel guilt for wanting basic partnership. They apologize for needing affection. They convince themselves that asking for contribution is cruelty. That's not love, that's psychological erosion. At this stage, a man's self-worth shrinks. He doubts his standards. He second-guesses his instincts. He forgets what healthy even looks like. But the truth is simple. Love cannot survive without respect. Once respect is gone, effort becomes servitude, kindness becomes obligation, and patience becomes punishment.
Long before a breakup becomes official, men feel an emotional disconnect that they rarely speak about. It starts subtly, a sense of being unappreciated, a quiet exhaustion that lingers in the corners of their mind, and a growing suspicion that no matter how much effort they invest, the relationship will never feel balanced. Over time, that suspicion turns into certainty, and as that certainty grows, so does the trend we're seeing everywhere. Men quietly choosing solitude over partnership. Society paints this as fear of commitment, emotional immaturity, or toxic masculinity. But the truth is far simpler. Men aren't walking away from love, they're walking away from imbalanced responsibility. Most modern relationships demand a complex list of invisible duties from men. He has to provide financially, emotionally, and socially. He must fix everything, plan everything, absorb mood swings, and still remain calm. But when he asks for reciprocity, something as small as attention, kindness, initiative, he's labeled demanding, controlling, or inconsiderate. Eventually, he learns a brutal lesson. Effort without appreciation is a slow form of suffocation. Years ago, partnership implied shared contribution. Today, contribution is selective. Traditional feminine effort has been rebranded as oppressive, but traditional masculine effort is still mandatory. The imbalance is subtle, but it's everywhere. In how chores are negotiated, in how affection is distributed, in how emotional labor is assigned. A relationship becomes a ledger, but the ink only records what the man didn't do. Men feel this weight every day, often silently. They don't want praise or trophies, they simply want acknowledgement. But modern culture has normalized minimizing male effort. A man paying the bills, repairing the house, comforting his partner, and emotionally leading the relationship? Bare minimum. Meanwhile, the woman folding laundry once a week? Emotional labor queen. When appreciation fades,
resentment grows. And resentment has consequences, not dramatic explosions, but slow withdrawal. Men begin to think carefully before speaking. They shrink parts of themselves to avoid conflict. They stop expressing needs because it's easier to go without than to be accused of being unreasonable. Eventually, they stop asking for anything at all. That silence is not peace, it's surrender. And when surrender reaches its peak, men start to imagine alternatives. Quiet apartments where no one questions their tone. Peaceful evenings where relaxing isn't interpreted as emotional distance. A bed without tension. A life without eggshells. That fantasy becomes tempting, sometimes intoxicating. Ironically, many women think men crave freedom to sleep around or avoid responsibility. In reality, men crave peace more than anything. Peace of mind, peace of space, peace of expression, peace to exist without being perpetually evaluated. This mental shift is happening globally. Look around. Marriage rates are dropping, young men are disengaging from dating apps, and many are investing energy into careers, hobbies, or personal growth instead of relationships that drain them. Because when a man realizes that partnership has become synonymous with sacrifice, he begins to question the arrangement itself. Not all women contribute to this dynamic. There are incredible partners out there, supportive, accountable, nurturing, balanced, but they are becoming rare, partly due to programming. Modern culture teaches women two conflicting beliefs simultaneously. You deserve everything, and never tolerate responsibility. Contribution becomes optional, accountability becomes oppressive. When these beliefs collide, relationships collapse. So how do men protect themselves? The first filter is observation. Men have learned to study actions, not promises. Does she offer help before being asked? Does she initiate intimacy without pressure? Does she show appreciation when he provides stability? These tiny details reveal more than any speech ever could. The second filter is boundaries. A man with boundaries seems intimidating because he refuses to become a bottomless provider. When he says no, even politely, entitlement becomes visible. It's a test of character. Healthy women respect standards. Entitled ones interpret them as attacks. The third filter is willingness to walk away. Men who stay too long in toxic dynamics become shells. Modern survival demands the courage to leave. Because the longer you tolerate disrespect, the more it becomes normalized. The fourth filter is consistency. Anyone can behave well for 3 months. Real partnership emerges after emotional comfort settles in. When the mask slips, you see the real character. Men are learning these filters the hard way, through exhausted fathers, broken engagements, and quiet heartbreak. And with every example, another man chooses solitude. There's a deeper psychological layer here. Men are raised to be providers, protectors, and problem solvers. They internalize responsibility as identity. But when that identity is criticized, belittled, or taken for granted, it breaks something fundamental inside them. A man who loses respect at home loses his sense of self everywhere. That's why solitude has become appealing. In solitude, no one turns his calm into coldness. No one weaponizes his silence. No one belittles his boundaries. Solitude allows men to reclaim their identity without emotional taxation. Some will argue he should just communicate better. But communication requires a listener who doesn't treat feelings as flaws. It requires maturity. It requires reciprocity. Communication cannot fix entitlement. It only reveals it. Others say he should toughen up. But men already toughen up. They endure quietly for years. They tolerate disrespect in the name of love. They suppress emotions to keep peace. Toughness isn't the problem. It's the misuse of that toughness by partners who exploit it. The truth is painful. Many modern relationships are built on extraction, not collaboration. When a woman sees a man as an asset to manage rather than a partner to support, respect dies. And when respect dies, love follows. This is why smart men are filtering early. They're watching how she reacts to small inconveniences, how she treats employees, how she speaks about responsibility, how she behaves when she doesn't get her way. These are early signs of future storms. And one more detail few talk about. Men who leave toxic dynamics don't hate women, they hate imbalance. They're tired of fighting wars inside their own homes. They want softness, warmth, collaboration, and when those are impossible to find, solitude becomes sanctuary. In solitude, a man rediscovers things relationships slowly erode: self-respect, identity, peace, hobbies, dreams. He sleeps with both eyes closed. His shoulders drop from constant tension. He begins to smile again, not because he avoided responsibility, but because he escaped unending accountability. But the most ironic twist is this. When men walk away, they're accused of being commitment phobic. Yet when they stay, their commitment is weaponized to demand endless sacrifice. It's a trap with two exits: bitterness or escape. Here is the truth nobody wants to admit. Men would rather be alone than feel alone next to someone.
By the time respect has evaporated and gratitude has withered, a darker phase begins to take shape: resentment. It doesn't appear as dramatic arguments anymore. In fact, it prefers silence. Resentment is quiet, cold, and strategic. It grows in the gaps where appreciation used to live. When a woman no longer sees your contributions as special, she starts to resent the fact that you can provide them at all. Strange as it sounds, your ability to hold everything together becomes evidence in her mind that you're not trying hard enough emotionally, and that's where everything twists. Modern culture encourages a mindset that transforms receiving help into being entitled to help. Once entitlement roots takes, the same support she used to appreciate becomes something she expects without question. And when expectations aren't met instantly, resentment blooms. It's the emotional tax men quietly pay for being consistent. Resentment shifts the narrative. Suddenly, everything you do becomes invisible, and everything you don't becomes unforgivable. The man starts walking on eggshells just to avoid unspoken accusations. But the eggshells aren't random. They're placed there by a belief system that says a man's responsibility is endless while her accountability is optional. And here's where many men lose themselves. To keep peace, they surrender boundaries. To avoid conflict, they sacrifice personal time, emotional space, and even masculine identity. Each surrender teaches one dangerous lesson: your needs matter less. Eventually, he stops asking for support entirely. He sleeps quietly next to a partner who doesn't notice the distance growing between them. She interprets his silence as emotional failure, not emotional exhaustion. Then comes the comparison stage. She consumes online narratives where every woman seems to receive more attention, more gifts, more luxury. She scrolls past highlight reels and wonders why her life doesn't look the same. Social media whispers that she deserves better, not realizing that better is often a man who has been crushed into numbness long before she arrived. Meanwhile, the man sits in the living room at 2 a.m., staring at nothing, trying to figure out how he lost a relationship he never stopped supporting. He doesn't realize the game changed when gratitude died. Once she stopped seeing value, she stopped offering value. That's when resentment mutates into emotional withdrawal. Intimacy becomes a negotiation, communication becomes weaponized, and the happiest memories become blurry background noise. Eventually, men face a crossroads: continue shrinking to fit an impossible mold, or reclaim boundaries and watch the resentment expose itself. When he finally says no, even gently, the narrative flips. Now she paints herself as oppressed, misunderstood, underappreciated. But reality is simpler.
She grew addicted to a one-way exchange. Modern dating has turned into a marketplace where men give endlessly and women judge the packaging more than the content. But resentment is the silent answer to imbalance. Once it arrives, relationships become endurance tests instead of partnerships.
By the time respect has evaporated and gratitude has withered, a darker phase begins to take shape: resentment. It doesn't appear as dramatic arguments anymore. In fact, it prefers silence. Resentment is quiet, cold, and strategic. It grows in the gaps where appreciation used to live. When a woman no longer sees your contributions as special, she starts to resent the fact that you can provide them at all. Strange as it sounds, your ability to hold everything together becomes evidence in her mind that you're not trying hard enough emotionally, and that's where everything twists. Modern culture encourages a mindset that transforms receiving help into being entitled to help. Once entitlement roots takes, the same support she used to appreciate becomes something she expects without question. And when expectations aren't met instantly, resentment blooms. It's the emotional tax men quietly pay for being consistent. Resentment shifts the narrative. Suddenly, everything you do becomes invisible, and everything you don't becomes unforgivable. The man starts walking on eggshells just to avoid unspoken accusations. But the eggshells aren't random. They're placed there by a belief system that says a man's responsibility is endless while her accountability is optional. And here's where many men lose themselves. To keep peace, they surrender boundaries. To avoid conflict, they sacrifice personal time, emotional space, and even masculine identity. Each surrender teaches one dangerous lesson: your needs matter less. Eventually, he stops asking for support entirely. He sleeps quietly next to a partner who doesn't notice the distance growing between them. She interprets his silence as emotional failure, not emotional exhaustion. Then comes the comparison stage. She consumes online narratives where every woman seems to receive more attention, more gifts, more luxury. She scrolls past highlight reels and wonders why her life doesn't look the same. Social media whispers that she deserves better, not realizing that better is often a man who has been crushed into numbness long before she arrived. Meanwhile, the man sits in the living room at 2 a.m., staring at nothing, trying to